Welcome to the CEO Project podcast, where Jim Schleckser, author of the best-selling book, Great CEOs Are Lazy, and the founder of the CEO Project, provides ideas and tools to help CEOs of mid to large-sized companies grow and optimize their businesses. Now, let's get started with the show. Welcome, everybody, to the CEO Project podcast. That's 3 in a row. I've said it right. We changed the name 3 shows ago, and now I've done it 3 in a row. I am establishing a pattern and a habit, and God help me, I hope I don't say it wrong ever going forward, but I will, I guarantee you. But anyway, welcome back. We're thrilled you're here. You know, one of the things that we deal with as CEOs is trying to get, more done in less time. In fact, that's sort of the thrust of Great CEOs Are Lazy, is how do you get more done in less time? But our guest today is really an expert on that topic. She helps people with focus. So when we talk about focus 3, having 3 things you're going to get done in the quarter as a CEO, but I think she does it more at a sort of a micro level. How do you unhook yourself? How do you find the right balance of sort of between procrastination and perfection that allows you to be in the zone, in the flow, and really become hyper productive, which I think is something that we all want. So Penny Zenker, who is known as the Focusologist, man, oh man, I thank God I have not been drinking, is a sought-after speaker, best-selling author, and former C-suite executive of a global top 5 research company. Over the past 3 decades, she's built and sold multiple multi-million-dollar businesses, including an award-winning tech firm that she founded. We're not going to read this all because we only have 30 minutes, but she's written 2 best-selling books, The Reset Mindset and The Productivity Zone, to help people stop their tug of war with time. She has a very popular TEDx talk, The Energy of Thought. It has over 1 million views worldwide. And she has a very successful podcast called Take Back Time. You know, when I heard that, Penny, I almost started singing a Cher song, right? You can turn back time. I think you need to change the name and have her as your opening music.
Absolutely. Well, she could be my spokesperson, but
There you go. Well, welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. I appreciate you making the time for us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So let's just start with, we all want to be super productive. What gets in our way? And by the way, just for those of you that aren't CEOs, this affects everybody. CEOs, you, me, moms, dads, lawyer, it doesn't matter. We all are affected by this. So it's a really universal topic. But so what stops us from bam, hitting the zone every day when we go to work? You?
Me or you? Everybody do this. Put your hands and point at yourself.
Okay.
Right? So it's us. We get in our own way is the biggest challenge. And so, we need to recognize where we're getting in our own way. You mentioned the balance between procrastination and perfectionism. Those are 2 things that pull us in different directions and sometimes feed each other. Mm-hmm. So we need to get out of that loop of where are we over functioning, where we're micromanaging, or really focused on the last 20% that really doesn't move the needle. Mm-hmm. And where are we giving those last 20% things to our people, and they're spending their time spinning their wheels, not really working on the most important things. And so that's the biggest thing, is we get distracted, and our emotions also get in the way.
So let's start with, we're going to do both of them, but what, because a lot of us are perfectionists, right? I'm lucky not to be that. What is the opposite of perfectionist? That's probably what I am. But, but a lot of people are, and they're like, I've got to make it perfect. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of being embarrassed. I don't want people to think I'm not competent if I turn in something with a period in the wrong place. So how do we get out of that mode of perfectionism? And I think you correctly identifying micromanagement is a related disease, if you will, right? So how do we break that chain? How do we stop?
Well, the first thing is to be aware that we're doing it, right? And to be aware of the cost. So let's say
I don't think people are. I think they go, I'm just paying attention to the details.
Right. Excellence. They'll say, I'm focused on excellence. It's not perfection. Right. There is a fine line between excellence and perfection. And where it is where it starts to cost us versus, drive us towards uh, growth and improvement, that's excellence, is we're looking to be better and looking for ways to improve, to be creative, to be innovative, and looking to provide more value. That's more of a value-based driven, right, is excellence.
Yep.
But perfectionism is more of that over-functioning fear of losing control or fear of making a mistake, where now we're spending so much time in that last area. So I guess one of the biggest things that we can really do is to take a look and ask ourselves a few questions, ask our team to provide us feedback. Where is it costing us? So for instance, for me, I'm a recovering micromanager and a recovering perfectionist, and I have to slow down and check in with myself each time. Am I overworking this? Where is good enough? Am I delegating this and giving people the authority as well as the responsibility, right? Because if I'm not giving them the authority and they have to keep coming back to me, or I have to keep feeding them, like a little bird, then the whole process slows down. So if we see that we're slowing down, that we're making mistakes, or that people are more apathetic or not creative, not being able to bring their best self, part of what I call the accountability paradox is that a lot of leaders say, oh, my people aren't accountable. And what it turns out is they're micromanaging and their people have stepped away. Why would I bring my best self and my best work if you're just going to shut it down and tell me this is the way we've always done it, this is the way I want you to do it, and or even take it away from me, right? And say, oh,
Right.
I can do it better. I'll give it to someone else who can do it. So patience and checking in more often is really the key, is creating that heightened sense of awareness for yourself, for the situation, for the marketplace, and also for the organization. I like to tell people, rate yourself in those 4 levels of awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and then ask some others around you to rate yourself, because sometimes there's a gap. Sometimes we rate ourselves too high or too low. So that'll give us sort of, a better balance.
Mm. Yeah, and we've seen this too, where humans become kind of flesh-colored puppets that run around doing your bidding, right? As opposed to like really contributing human beings. I actually wrote an article about if somebody owns a project and they show up and you could make it kind of 10 or 20% better by giving them lots of feedback, don't do it. Like you'd rather have somebody who owns it at the 100% level doing 80% work than somebody who we made it perfect, but now they own it about 50% because they're like, okay,
Yes.
fine, fine, it's yours, right? And for all the men in the audience, fine is never fine.
Not fine.
um, so, um, but I think what you're talking about is a fairly high level of EQ. I mean, I've got to know myself, and usually somebody who is a micromanager has had a success pattern that
Mhm.
got them to wherever the heck they are in life, and it's like breathing for them. I don't think it's weird because it's what I've done to get where I am. So how do we develop the EQ to recognize it? Because that takes a lot of insight, it feels like. Some have, some don't, I guess.
Well, many don't, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's why I say that look around. Like, are your people, do you have a high turnover rate?
Mm.
Do you see that people aren't bringing creative ideas and they're not moving things forward? Do you feel like your team is not accountable? It's giving yourself space to ask those questions and check in with yourself and with your team.
Yeah.
So many leaders is just like, go, 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 go. Well, we have to slow down a little bit. So in order to get the maximum level of progress and growth, we actually have to slow down, then push, push, push,
Mm. Yeah.
because we don't recognize in the gap.
There's a Navy SEAL term that goes slow is fast
Uh-huh. Exactly.
because it's refined and smooth and you just don't have to redo it. So that's actually the fastest way to do it. So I hear you. I like your sort of what are the costs of perfectionism that you hit, like lack of accountability by your team, um, being a big one, overworking things being another one, lack of creativity from your team. And so if you see that and you go, oh my God, my team is just not accountable. They're not bringing my creativity. I think your point is start looking in the mirror because you are probably creating that problem through your behavior.
Absolutely. I mean, look at it that whenever you have a problem in the organization, the first place any leader should look is themselves,
Yeah.
right? Because a great leader can turn things around. They can help to shift the culture if they see that the culture isn't in the right place. They can help to provide greater clarity, make sure that people are clear of what the priorities are. One of the biggest things that I've seen, that maybe this is taking it away from perfectionism a little bit, but that people aren't clear on what their priorities are. So they're being pulled in so many different directions, and they're not saying anything, but I in my own studies, I've found that 73% of people say that competing priorities is one of their biggest distractors and productivity killers, is because they are not able to focus.
Yeah. It reminds me of the conversations with the boss. They want you to do something more, and you go, great. What comes off my list?
Right.
And they go, nothing. They go, well, that was not helpful. Let's move over to procrastination for a little bit. So why do we procrastinate? And it's funny, when I published Great CEOs Are Lazy, one of our members, our CEO members goes, well, I got the lazy part down. Awesome. I got to work on the great part. So why do we procrastinate? What mentally gets in our way physically? What's stopping us from just jumping on it every day?
Right. Well, I mean, for each person, it's different, right? But
Yeah.
it can be fear-based, right?
Okay.
Where we don't have clarity, could be one thing, but it could be that we're afraid that we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to deliver that excellence that we're looking to deliver. So we kind of put it off. There's, so many different things where people are just feeling that they don't know where to start. That's also something, right? Where they don't know the steps that they need to take. They don't necessarily have the full vision. So you know what? It'll come to me, right? It'll come to me. Or they like the pressure. They think they like the pressure of last minute. There's the whole procrastinate on purpose, is that all the things that I get done while I'm procrastinating, right, makes me more productive. There's a whole or writing on your checklist all the things that, oh, I had my coffee and I did the morning meeting.
I
But
love crossing things off my list. You reminded me of the Charlie Brown line, right? I work better under pressure. One of the cartoons, he says that. But I got to say, some people have that pattern. I had a woman in my doctoral program. She would usually, the night before it was due, a big project,
right,
all night till
right.
3, 4 in the morning, and she'd pound it out. I'm like, how the heck do you do that? But that was her pattern.
Well, and again, there's a cost, right? There's a cost to you physically. You're up all night, and
Yep.
there's a certain amount of pressure that's good, and that creates even creativity. But there's a point where it passes the point of productive, and it becomes unproductive. There's a cost to it, right? So a physical cost, that it wears down your body, and people burn out by constantly being in that urgency, emergency state.
Mm-hmm.
But also, energy is contagious. So if you're in a team, even if it's just yours, everybody around you is stressing with you, right? And so that's a problem, because that stress is having a ripple effect. Plus, people don't feel you're reliable. They don't know whether you're going to get it done on time. So they're worried, not just because you're worried, but they're worried that you're going to hold up the project. The project's not going to come forward because you haven't done, your milestones or whatever has created in that sequence of effects. So there are costs to it. And, so it's just being aware of, when is this pressure good and driving me in a positive way, and where is it, gone to the point where it's no longer a positive, it's become a negative.
Mm.
That's like any strength, right, can become a weakness if
And,
it's
And I know I've written stuff in the middle of the night that sounded great at 3 in the morning, and then I look at it the next day and go, "Oh my Lord, what the heck was I thinking?" So the quality of work is certainly impacted, right? But here is the interesting thing about pressing towards the end. I don't have time to be a perfectionist, right?
True.
So if I've got that, I think people sometimes use it as if I'm a perfectionist, I push so I don't have a lot of time, so I don't cycle it. Because if I finished a week ahead, I would just pull it out, recycle it, pull it out, recycle it. And instead, it's
Right. You
done
don't
and it's
overthink
over.
it or
Yeah.
overwork it.
Because I
Yeah,
don't have time to do that anymore. Right. So
absolutely.
maybe there's a
That's
little
true.
positive in there. So
But
what do
you can
you,
always, maybe I could just stick this in there. You can always define what's good enough,
yeah,
like what actually solves the problem. I used to be in software development, right? You need to know what problems are you solving. The extra bells and whistles are just extra bells and whistles.
yeah,
And sometimes they would require so much more time to implement. Oh, this is really cool. Let's add this in. But it doesn't have any major overall impact. So why do it?
yeah.
So we have to ask ourselves, right? Is stay clear to what's the purpose of what you're working on and understand what's good enough. And
Mhm.
then what can you let go of and say, this is not going to bring any further income or impact to the situation.
Yeah. This is where MVP, minimum viable product, came out. It was to give people permission not to build the God box with all the bells and whistles and everything we possibly could add, the fully envisioned product. That's not going out day one. MVP's going out. Fully envisioned product is 3 years from now, and
Right.
that's okay.
And that may change too
As
between now and
as
then
we learn stuff,
in
right?
3 years.
So how does an executive or business person figure out, on this one I've got to put the 100% effort on this, like it's 80, it's an 80%, or on this one I can delegate and it really doesn't matter. Like somebody else can handle this. It's okay. I'm not involved. How do you help them think about, where do I put the big effort on and where do I put lesser effort? Because that's not as critical as you indicated.
Right. I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, that 20% of your actions and decisions are going to lead to 80% of the results. So the question is, when you're looking at an objective, is what's the 20%? What do you do first? You always take what makes the biggest impact and do that first.
Oh no, I take what's easy and fun. I do that first.
And that is why that is called procrastination.
Yeah, well, yep.
But that's also the Eisenhower matrix.
Yep.
Takes something that's more subjective and says, well, let's take
Yeah,
urgency.
run us through the Eisenhower matrix for those that don't know it. It's a good, simple little mental model.
Yeah, and so that mental model says, let's put the 4 quadrants based on urgency and importance.
There you go.
I do not like that model.
Oh,
I don't like it because it makes urgency a criteria, which I don't think that we should be focusing on what's most. It just shouldn't be in that you're going to get those urgent things done in a different way, and that shouldn't be in the criteria. And both of them are subjective because today everything's urgent. If you ask people, right, is they don't have the ability to even discern what's urgent and what's not urgent, or what's important and not important. So the criteria that I use for that same matrix is impact and effort,
hmm.
because our goal isn't to get more done in less time. Our goal is to reach our goals faster, make greater impact with less effort. That is our goal. And so that's why I use that matrix, so that our 20% is what creates the greatest impact based on the objectives that we've set, the greatest impact with the least amount of effort. That's the low-hanging fruit.
Sure.
As an executive coach, I always say, let's gain some momentum and let's take the low-hanging fruit and let's do those things. And they are easy because they're low effort and we know that the greatest impact, so they're going to fill us up with the greatest amount of momentum and feel good as
But inevitably you have to get to it's hard and it's important and it has high impact, right? Because
right.
big things take effort. If it was all easy, man, I mean, it wouldn't be complex. It's complex because there are plenty of things that are big impact that do take a lot of time. So I get
True, but I'm
building
talking about
momentum for
effort.
change.
This can be on a day-to-day basis or a
Okay.
week basis, right? It depends on the frame of what you're looking at. But of course, those would be the next things, right? Once you're done those things that you can accomplish quickly and easily, whether it's this day, this week, this month, then you have those things that are high impact, high effort. And you're going to do those first. I mean, you're going to do those next. And that's where you're going to also look to optimize. So that first quadrant is prioritize. The second quadrant is optimize. You want to take some specific time so that you can delegate, automate, figure out how you can take it from high effort to low effort. And then everything below the line is where you have to look to compromise and minimize.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, you wrote a couple of books, and that falls in it's hard, but it's important. So it's going to take a long time. You got to grind it out. And yet the impact can be profound if you do it right and in terms of your business and so forth. So there's my classic example, because I've done the same. I've written a couple books, and it's a pain in the butt, and it's a lot of time, and it's day after day after day until you just can't read the darn thing anymore.
Right.
And yet it's important, and you have to do it, or you want to do it. Hopefully, nobody's making you do it. I think
And there's a point where you stop the revisions and you don't go to perfectionism, because you could edit and edit and edit forever, right? As you gain more knowledge, you want to put it in. So that's a great example of where you just have to draw the line and say, you know what, it's good enough. I made my point. And we'll do another version in 2 years or something. And you put it out.
I'll tell you a story. So I had my first book, I edited it. I had a professional editor. I had a fine copy editor. I had all this stuff. Book published. A friend of mine opens it up, random page, and she goes, "Oh, there's a typo." I'm like, son of a gun, right? And you
Inevitably, it always happens.
You just have to be okay with it, right?
But that's exactly the point, right? And if somebody's going to throw out the book because there's a misspelling or there's something, then you have to say, then you need to work on some other things before you're getting, you should be focused on what you're going to take away from the reading, and not if there's a little mistake in the book.
No, they did. It just that particular individual has a gift for finding mistakes. So, I think part of this is a situation we create for ourselves, though. So when we're discussing sort of commitments we make to people, we don't want to disappoint them. And so we commit to very tighter deadlines than we really should, creating that urgency that you talked about, right? So I literally the other day, somebody said, it's not a big project, but he's like, "Hey, can you have it done by Friday, tomorrow?" I'm like, "No, I can have it done by next Friday." And he gave me the little sad face, but it would have put too much pressure on the thing to try to do it this Friday. And it's not that important. So it can wait a week. It's not a big deal. And by the way, the world will be fine as a result. So I think there's a skill in being willing to disappoint people to not create pressure on you in your equation, on your side of the paper. I don't know if you've seen that work or you have thoughts around that.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't ask enough questions, right? So when do you need this by, and what's the impact? What is the reason why this is the deadline?
Yeah.
Some people it's a hot potato and they want to throw it to you. Doesn't mean it has to be your hot potato, so clarifying with questions to understand. And if something, maybe only a piece of it needs to be done by that date, by this Friday, and then the rest of it could be completed the following Friday. So, it's really, we have to be willing to say no, to ask questions, to challenge, to qualify, to negotiate. And we don't do that.
Yeah.
And especially we don't allow our people often to do that. And they need to be able to do that in order to make sure that they're doing their best work and bringing their creativity. And like you said, coming back to that point around ownership and really being able to own their output and quality.
I think that's a good point. Like when we delegate to somebody and we assign a deadline, either we need to explain why that deadline is the deadline, or check in with them and like, "Hey, I'm thinking Friday. Is that going to work for you? Because it's okay if it happens next Wednesday. It's just fine too." Or you take your time. You do it when you need to do it because it's not time urgent. I mean, that whole conversation around time, to give permission to say, "Oh, thank God, because I'm busy as heck, and next week I can get to it, but this week would be trouble." We probably don't do that enough as leaders, I think.
For sure. And they think when the CEO says it, that, you're going to make it the highest priority.
Yeah.
And I've had that too. And then they're like, "Oh, well, actually I'm going on vacation and I don't need it but they rush to do it overnight so that you had it the next day." So we definitely, as leaders need to take that responsibility to make sure that we're giving enough information so that we give people that flexibility.
Yeah. So when somebody's really good at this, what does that look like? What does their day look like? If they're an exceptional focusologist, what is a great day for somebody who is highly skilled at this look like?
Well, I mean, somebody who, everybody has a different type of routine
Yep.
and a different way that they organize themselves. But basically, it starts the day already with a clear plan of what's going to take place today. Your calendar is filled with those most important things, but not at 100%,
Right.
because you don't leave yourself any flexibility. But you have those things that are most impactful. And then maybe you have also pockets of, let's say, an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon that allow yourself to be reactive. So you plan your reactive time. People can access you and ask questions, and you can work on emails and various different things that might need your attention. But you have very clear, defined focus time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll
And
do that on my calendar sometimes. I'll actually block an hour just to work on or 2 hours to work on a project, and no calls, no nothing. That's what I'm going to do that hour. That seems to help me.
And very clear rules when you check your email.
Mm.
So instead of checking it like we do 3,000, like that is literally the number 3,000 times a day that people touch and swipe on their phone, right? Touch, tap, swipe, and scroll on their phone. So we need to set some rules for ourselves so that we hold to those boundaries. What time are we giving ourselves for that? Making sure that we have what I call reset moments
Mhm.
are absolutely critical, that they're built into our day, because we could go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. And what happens is that stress compounds,
Mm.
and that then, erodes our ability to bring that creativity, to make quality decisions and the things that we need to do on a day-to-day. So just taking 60-second resets have actually been proven to uh, affect our nervous system and change our brain chemistry so that we can stop that stress from compounding. That might look like taking some incense, lemon, not incense. It could be incense or the essential oils, lemon oil or lavender or something, and just taking a couple deep breaths in. It might mean taking off your shoes and going for a quick walk outside to ground yourself. It might be a quick meditation of breathing, right? So all of those things will help us to reset our nervous system and be able to be at our best for the next item.
So I
And
like
it's
that. I've had those days where it's back to back to back to back to back to back. And
terrible.
I used to tell my admin, I'm like, just schedule 15 minutes so I can go to the bathroom somewhere
Yeah.
in that day, please. So that's
Well, and
what
I
we
think the
do.
rules can also come where we don't have 60-minute meetings anymore. Then we won't have back-to-back meetings. Make 45-minute meetings.
I got to tell you, I think you hit a real point. It's a little personal bugaboo. When the meeting's done in 37 minutes, everybody should leave. Everybody should leave. I can't remember the company. They have a culture. They go, if you're in a meeting, you don't think you should be there, it is rude to stay. This is weird.
I like
What's
that.
polite is to leave the meeting if you are not needed in this meeting. And so, before you know it, there's two people at like, I guess the meeting's over, which is great. Oh, Elon Musk, according to Sharon, Elon Musk, it is you are want to leave. If you don't belong in the meeting, leave. That's the polite thing to do. It's just a complete culture change because
Yeah,
everybody feels like they have to stay and they have to say something, which
right,
kill me now.
right.
Um,
So that boggles me. That's a whole nother show to talk about our meeting culture and why we haven't done anything about it, even though that we know that it sucks and it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm there for that conversation. Let's do that one. I would love to. The thing about importance though, and I had a member that said this, but also Jeff Bezos has said it. He goes, CEO of Amazon, big company, goes, I make 4 to 5 decisions a year that really, really matter. It's kind of shocking. He's going to work 250 days and 5 decisions matter.
Right.
The corollary or the ancillary comment was from one of our members. He goes, The problem is I don't know which 5 of those they are until later. So your point about prioritization, I'm all over. If I could know which 5 I really were going to make the difference, I'd put a lot of time on them. But sometimes you just don't know. It's in retrospect, you're like, oh my gosh, that was actually super important, that decision, as it turns out.
Right.
So that is complicated, particularly at the CEO level. What tools do people use? What you said everybody has a different, but what have you seen? You talked about calendaring. There's obviously to-do lists. What else have you seen people use as tools to support this, trying to be more focused?
I mean, there's to-do lists like, remember the milk and types of things like that. There's, you know, there are actually tools where you can use these matrices, in that way. So ton of different tools. They might use a project management tool like Monday.com or Asana, even to manage their own projects. Because if you think about it, they're not necessarily tasks, they're projects,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That have a cluster of tasks that can be in a category. And that just helps you also to keep things more organized, right? So some people use days where each day has a focus or an intention, right? Where this is a strategy day, and I'm going to focus on working on things that are higher level and at the strategic level. Maybe one day is team level. I'm going to make sure that I'm making my team touches, that these are when my one-on-ones are scheduled. So the more that we can batch things and categorize them in that context, that's also extremely supportive and helpful. I'm not necessarily the best person to ask about tools.
Okay.
Because I try to minimize the number of tools. We have too many tools. We have too many chat platforms.
Amen to that.
Overload.
Amen to that. I probably have 5 on my phone. It's crazy.
So, it depends on the nature of that person's work and the way they like to organize themselves. Some people like Excel with lots of different colors on their calendars and everything. I hate that. Like, I hate looking at something that's got all these colors. It makes me feel like overwhelmed just looking at it.
Okay, you're not allowed to look at my calendar then.
But it works for you. So I
It
think
does, but
the thing is to, and I come back to these reset moments, and what I call dynamic reassessment is that as leaders, and that's what I've written about in my latest book, The Reset Mindset, is that we can no longer have fixed ways of working because things work until they don't, right? And then we hit, our way of working has changed. We're dynamic now. Sometimes we're working at the office, sometimes we're at home, sometimes we're at the client or on the road, and so we have to be more dynamic and have maybe new tools that support us differently today than they might have done 5 or 10 years ago, because the amount of change. So I use these reset moments to also to check in with myself. What's working and what's not working? At the end of every day, what went well today? What were my wins? Instead of just what didn't I do today, right? Because that's sometimes what we focus on. So just using these reset moments to also look for real-time adjustments that we can make day in and day out.
Love it. I also like to end my day with my tomorrow's to-do list. What I find is I write it down and then I can forget about it. And I can create a
Absolutely.
boundary between work and home, friends, family, whatever, because I wrote it down. I don't have to think about it anymore. And it's not going away. I'm not going to lose it. I worry. I used to worry when I didn't do that. I'd be like, oh, geez, I got to remember to do this. I got to remember to do
Right.
that. And it would just consume me, and
Yeah, it's all in the head then, right?
yeah,
It's what I would call that is a bookend. You're bookending your day so that you can have a great transition into your family or your home life,
your life. Yeah.
personal life.
Awesome. Well, what should I have asked about, Penny, that I didn't ask you about?
Uh, I guess maybe just I could tell you about the reset mindset a little bit.
Please, and this is your new book.
This is my new book that came out in September.
Go for it. Let's sell some books.
Well, not just about that, but just to talk about that, make another point about that dynamic reassessment that I call the reset mindset, the new generation of the growth mindset. So we know in 2006, Carol Dweck wrote the book Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. And she showed how, with lots of great research around students and corporations, and how when people approach things with great effort and persistence, that there becomes then a culture of learning, and we can learn and grow over time. And so the basis is about learning and growing. So the difference in why is this the new generation, is because in 2006, we had so few changes going on at any given time. There was a study that showed in 2016, there were only 2 changes that were going on at any given time in an organization, like a technology change or a change in a business model or leadership or something like that. And in 2022, 10 changes were going on at any given time.
Wow.
So we are reeling, right, with all of these different things that are constantly changing, taking up energy and mind space. So learning and growing over time is not as effective anymore in this environment as learning real time, is taking that feedback, whether it's from our team, whether it's from the results that we're getting, whether it's from our clients, or even the way that we feel, that this dynamic reassessment is allowing us to learn real time and grow real time. Or I shouldn't say just learn, but adapt to make those changes in real time. And it comes from a base of value creation. So it's not coming from what we want to learn, it's coming from the value that we want to create. And so that's kind of what the book talks about, and how we can implement that personally, and also within our leadership, as a way to create more creativity, more productivity, and make our people more autonomous.
I love it. You know, in the Korean War, they figured out that what they call the ODA loop, observe, decide, act loop. If you increase the speed of that, shrank the size of the ODA loop inside that of your competitor, the other pilot in this case, you win. So I think your point here is the ODA loops are shrinking on us from what they were, and there are more of them at the same time. So micro learning, micro decisions, and then determining the impact of those decisions is really where it's at nowadays, with these pauses in between to really understand what's going on.
Exactly. I wasn't aware of that, but that's exactly it. These reset moments are feedback loops, and there's 3 steps, which is to step back, get perspective, and realign, which is ODA. So
there you go. Boom.
Nothing's new, right? It's just
I know this is the problem.
Packaged in a new way. But
well,
hey,
Penny,
whatever sticks.
This was spectacular. If people want to engage you in their organizations or personally, what's the best way to get a hold of you besides buying the book?
Sure. They can go to pennieskeynote.com, and then they can contact me there. LinkedIn, and is also a great spot to say hello, follow me, and we can connect there.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This was great.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty. And we'll see you next time on the CEO Project Podcast. Thanks for joining us. At the CEO Project, we work with CEOs to help them grow their business. And our members represent billions of dollars of revenue and profit. And frankly, amongst all of us, we've probably made every mistake in the book, including some you haven't made yet. So if you want to learn from the experience of a bunch of really seasoned CEOs, we're a great place to hang out. In this podcast, what you're going to hear are some of those ideas, concepts, and things that are just going to help you on your journey. If you want to find out more, reach out to us at theceoproject.com, or you can contact me personally at jim@theceoproject.com. Thanks for listening to the CEO Project Podcast. We'll see you next time. Be sure to subscribe to get all the future episodes, and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.